Hey there. We all love a good story about a brilliant invention. But what about the ones that didn't quite make it? The ones that got left behind? Well, today we're diving into the incredible world of forgotten inventions. We're going to look at the amazing sparks, the spectacular failures, and the hidden stories that actually shape the world we live in today. So, let's jump right in.
So let me start by asking you this. When I say a failed invention, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Is it some dusty old prototype sitting in a garage, a company that went belly up? Yeah, it's easy to just see it as a total dead end. But what if that's not the real story? What if failure is actually one of the most important ingredients for innovation?
I mean, we've all been told the classic story, right? A lone genius has that sudden eureka moment, and boom, the world is changed forever. We picture progress as this perfect, straight line, always going up. But the real history of technology? Oh, it's nothing like that. It is messy, it's tangled, and honestly, it's way more interesting than the fairy tale version we usually get.
Okay, so to really get what I'm talking about, let's dive into our first section, Echoes from the Future. This is all about those ideas that were so far ahead of their time, it was like they were beamed back from a future that hadn't even happened yet.
Just think about something like a tablet, that portable glass screen that connects you to, well, everything. It feels so modern, so 21st century, doesn't it? But get this. What if I told you the basic concept was dreamed up way back in 1968? It was a device called the Dynabook. The idea was there, but the world and the technology just hadn't caught up yet.
And this timeline, wow, it really puts that huge gap into perspective. You can see the initial idea, this incredible prototype, popping up decades, sometimes almost a whole century before it ever becomes something you or I would buy. The idea itself wasn't the problem. The problem was the world around it. The inventors didn't have cheap computer chips, they didn't have fast internet. Heck, people just didn't get what it was for. They had the right seed, but the soil just wasn't fertile yet.
And this, right here, this was the typical reaction. A quote just like this shows you how even the most game-changing ideas were just dismissed. They were seen as quirky toys for wealthy people, or maybe some weird scientific experiment, but definitely not something that would ever change the way regular people lived. The world just couldn't see the future that these inventors were so busy building.
But it's not always just about bad timing. Some inventions weren't just early, they were complete, total, commercial disasters. And yet, these beautiful failures, as we're about to see, are often the most crucial stepping stones for all the progress that comes later.
Okay, try to picture this. A machine called the Memex, thought up all the way back in 1945. The goal was insane for the time. It was supposed to be a personal desk that stored and linked all of your books, your notes, your records, basically a proto-internet just for you. The vision was absolutely massive, but the technology to actually build it? It just didn't exist. It was a total flop.
And the numbers, well, they speak for themselves. Fewer than 50 units sold. By any business metric, that is a catastrophic failure. Investors lost their shirts, the company probably vanished, and the whole thing was basically forgotten. You'd think that's the end of the story, right? A dead end? Well, not quite.
Because this is where things get really interesting. The true legacy of these flops isn't in their sales figures. It's in the failure itself. See, just by trying to build this impossible machine, maybe the engineers stumbled on a new scientific principle. Or maybe, years down the line, some of its weird components were pulled out of a box and used for a totally different breakthrough. And most importantly, the grand, ambitious story of the attempt inspired the next generation to try again, but smarter. The failure became the launchpad.
And that brings us to the most human part of this whole thing, the people. Because for every famous inventor whose name we all know, there are dozens, maybe hundreds of unsung geniuses. These are the architects who laid the foundation, but their names just got lost in the shadows of history.
This here tells a story we've seen again and again. On one side, you've got a household name like Alexander Graham Bell, who gets credit for inventing the telephone. But then, on the other side, you have a forgotten pioneer, a guy named Antonio Meucci. He actually developed a working telephone years before Bell, but he was too poor to file the right kind of patent. The pioneer does the groundbreaking work, but it's the person with better timing or better marketing who ends up in the history books. These forgotten figures, they aren't just trivia answers. They are the essential architects of our world. Their discoveries, their early sketches, their failed prototypes, that's the invisible foundation that all of our modern technology is built on. And pointing that out doesn't take anything away from the famous inventors, it just gives us a more honest, a more complete picture of how progress actually works.
So let's start to pull all these different ideas together. When you do, you start to see the true shape of progress. And I can tell you, it has nothing to do with that single magical eureka moment. It's something way more complex and way more collaborative.
So what's the big takeaway here? Well, first, innovation isn't a straight line. It's a messy, tangled web where ideas connect across time. Second, failure is often just a fancy word for research and development. It's a necessary step. Third, progress is a team sport, and the team includes countless people both famous and forgotten. And finally, and this is a big one, a great idea is only as good as its timing. The world has to be ready for it.
And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. If history is just filled with these amazing ideas that were just waiting for their moment to shine, what about our time? What seemingly failed or forgotten ideas are out there right now, just sitting on a shelf, waiting for the right piece of tech, the right cultural shift, or the right person to come along and bring them to light? What future are we already living in without even realizing it?